How's it going, guys? It's your boy Kanji FPL and welcome back to the channel. On today's video, we're going to be going through my Game Week 36 team review as well as my Game Week 37 team selection. Now, this week was a very inauspicious week. In fact, I think this week was a microcosm of my entire FPL season, where I went to bring in a differential captain and I captained Bukayo Saka, and he picked up a 10-pointer, which I thought was very good. And if you got 10 points from your captain every week, you'd be very satisfied. But the most captain player was Erling Haaland, who went out there and picked up his biggest haul of the season with 4 goals, 2 penalties, and 2 goals from open play. I mean, I knew the risk when I decided to go against Erling Haaland. I knew that Man City are the best team in the league. They're fighting to win the Premier League, and Erling Haaland is out there trying to win the Golden Boot as well. So not only do Man City have motivation to win, Haaland has motivation to keep killing it, and they're playing against a team that's potentially on the beach because Wolves are solidly avoiding relegation. They don't have anything to really fight for. So I knew this game was going to be an easy Man City win, but I just looked at the different captaincy options for Game Week 37 and Game Week 38, and I feel like there isn't really anyone else that I would trust to take the armband away from Erling Haaland. In Game Week 37, there are 3 captaincy alternatives to consider. The first would be Heung-min Son, the second would be Cole Palmer, and then the third would be Alexander Isak, but I do feel like I have concerns about all of them. Let's start off with Heung-min Son. Spurs have just been very inconsistent. The coach, Postecoglou, has been rotating the starting 11. Richarlison has been coming in and out of the team, even though he does feel like Spurs' second best finisher on the team. Even though he lacks creativity, I feel like he is probably the best attacker apart from Heung-min Son, and I don't have enough faith in Spurs scoring enough goals over the double game week in order to warrant captaining a Spurs player. The second option to consider would be Cole Palmer, playing against Brighton and against Nottingham Forest. Now, Brighton have kind of been the whipping boys of the league over the past 10 Premier League games, but Brighton had a very strong performance against Aston Villa. I do know that João Pedro had taken a penalty and missed it and then had another tap in, so if you normalized for that, you'd assume that Brighton would have probably put up 2.5 XG in the game, but they still had a very strong performance against a team that's fighting for the top 4. So Brighton had a very strong performance, and Chelsea are also playing against Nottingham Forest. And what do we notice about the teams that are fighting relegation towards the end of the season? They always pick up some crazy results that you just don't expect, because whenever there's pressure, sometimes you can create a diamond. And I do trust Hudson-Odoi and Alenga as well as Gibbs-White to just get a goal against Chelsea, and I do feel like there's a chance they can make Chelsea work. And so I don't feel like I want to be captaining Cole Palmer either, and that kind of just leaves me with Alexander Isak, and I do have 2 concerns with Alexander Isak. The first is that he missed the penalty, and I think that Callum Wilson has always been a greedy striker. He has one of the best goals and assist ratios per 90 in the Premier League, and because Isak missed it, I do feel like Wilson has the right to say, hey, like, I've been the penalty taker for this club. If there's another penalty, I'm going to take it. The second thing is that what if Eddie Howe decides to just play Isak out wide, or plays him in a dual striker role where Isak sort of drops deeper and Wilson is the figurehead of the attack? So I do prefer Callum Wilson over Isak if they get the same amount of minutes. And I just feel like there's a chance, and it's not going to be a large possibility, but there's a chance that Isak could be benched for one of the games and Wilson could just start up top by himself in one of those games. So I do feel like because of the risks with Isak, Son, and Palmer, I don't feel like I want to be captaining against Erling Haaland in Game Week 37, especially when you look at the double game week for Man City, where they're playing against Fulham away and Tottenham away. I know Fulham have a very strong record at home, especially defensively, but Liverpool went out there and they scored a couple goals against them, so I'd expect Manchester City to do the same thing. And Spurs have been playing this atrocious high line, and they're just not pressing opposition defenders enough. And because of that, defenders are able to just play balls over the top of the Spurs high line, and for wingers to just run onto them and get some goals and assists. Like, it's kind of just very repetitive. Postecoglou has only been going for plan A. I haven't really seen his tactics change to a plan B or plan C. So I just feel like I'm expecting Man City to batter Spurs because they just haven't been playing great football in general. So I'm just scared to go against Haaland in Game Week 37. I don't think there's a doubt in my mind I'm going to be captaining him, even though I do feel like the game plan for Spurs could be for them to sit back more than they do against other teams. And even if they sit in, I do just feel like Man City have so much quality in players like Bernardo Silva and Doku and Grealish and Foden and KDB to unlock the Spurs defense. Spurs' defense is not really their strong suit anyway. So I do feel like going against Holland in Game Week 37 isn't smart, even if you're looking to chase rank. And in Game Week 38, Manchester City are playing against West Ham. West Ham just got battered. They conceded 5 goals to Chelsea and also conceded 5 goals to Crystal Palace 2 weeks ago. So it just doesn't make sense for me to captain against Holland in Game Week 38 because I'm expecting Man City to put up at least 3 goals in that game. So I'm kind of looking at Game Week 37 and Game Week 38, and I'm kind of going to agree with the template captain option. So the best week to go against the template captain was going to be this week, and that's why I captained Bukayo Saka for his 10-pointer, but failing this differential captain is a microcosm of my season. I did feel like Game Week 36 was the right week to take on the risk, but it didn't really pay off. And I feel like there were very solid captaincy alternatives. Saka had Bournemouth, where they had conceded 4 penalties to them in the reverse fixture, and Arsenal have been playing such great football where they're trying to press Man City in order to win the Premier League. I thought he was a great alternative, and he got 10 points. In any other week, that would be a great score from your captain. The other alternatives would be players like Foden or KDB, who are always viable alternatives because they're such great quality players. Of course, they're not going to be optimal because they're not on the penalties, but they're good alternatives. Even Cole Palmer, he's at double digits in 4 of the last 5. In fact, when you look at what Haaland did in his double game week, he put up a measly 10 points in 2 games. So if there was a time to go against Haaland, this was the week to do it. And it's just a pity how it worked out. And I think it just kind of made me look ridiculous. And I'm sure there's got to be a lot of people that are in a similar boat that tried to go against Erling Haaland. And I'm sure there will be people that tried to go against him in Game Week 37 and in Game Week 38. But I just don't think that was the right choice. And I'm sure there are a lot of template managers that are probably thinking like, wow, this guy's such a fool. Why would you ever go against Erling Haaland against a relegation team? Well, it's all about meeting your goals. Like, what are your goals for the season? I'm looking at my mini league where I'm 25 points behind. I'm looking at my overall rank where I'm sitting at the top 220k, where my goal is to be in the top 100k. If I was sitting in the top 100k, I wouldn't have considered even going against Haaland this week in general. I don't think I would have captained against him this week, next week, or the week after. And I just feel like it's so situation based, like I just used my triple captaincy on Heung-min Son and he only got me 1 return. In the Arsenal game, he went to the Chelsea fixture and I was really popping the champagne. I was excited. I really thought there was at least 1 return that was going to come in this fixture. But when he blanked and then Palmer outscored him, I realized like, man, it's going to be hard for me to climb to the top 100k unless I take on some risk. And that's why I decided to pull the trigger. And it didn't work out. And I'm not really beating myself up. I just feel like I made a good decision and I thought that this was the week to do it, and it just kind of blew up in my face. And that's just how FPL is. You kind of just need to captain the players that pick up 2 penalties every single week, right? Just predict it. It's so obvious, right? Well, honestly, boys, I'm feeling a little bit of disappointment because the more that I play FPL, the more years that I play it, the more that I'm realizing that it's hard to be creative. Like when you see situations like this where I've taken on a lot of differential expected value over the course of the season. For example, I sold Haaland in Game Week 8 to spread the money around. And look at my back 3. It was amazing. I had Trent, Trippier, and White. Like I nailed the perfect back 3 at that time. And my rank didn't really go up because Haaland returned every single week and picked up his massive hauls, which I missed against Manchester United, against Chelsea from Game Week 8 to Game Week 16. And I really question, like, will I be able to ever sell Haaland again? Like, I feel like FPL is supposed to be about bring in the players that you love to watch, captaining the players that you think are going to score the most points, even if you think it's slightly suboptimal. I just feel like I'm losing my creativity and I'm losing that idea to like think outside the box. And that's the most disappointing feeling of anything else I've felt this season. So that's the one thing that's kind of been breaking my heart and something I really need to consider if I'm ever looking to bring in differentials or go against the template in terms of players, structure, or the captaincy contenders. I should definitely think twice. And I think I should definitely consider more in depth whenever I'm looking to go against Erling Haaland from a captaincy perspective, especially when he's playing some of the bottom 10 teams. I just think whether it's home or away, just captain Haaland and live with the results because he can do so much damage, especially with his high effective ownership. I mean, he's an XG overperformer in general, and he's at such a young age where he can consistently just pump out games and play 90 minutes consistently. So I just feel like going into next season, there are a lot of lessons that I need to learn. And I just think, I wonder if I'll just be more template next season because I'll lose my creativity because I'm hurt of based on what has happened this season, or if I'll continue to play my own game. And I'm not exactly sure what to think, but this is something that I'm definitely contemplating, is being more template moving into next season. I'm not sure if any of you guys are thinking the same ways, but it does feel like a lot of times when I took on the risk, I didn't get enough rewards to justify taking the risk. These are just some thoughts that I'm currently thinking about. And if there are any people that are thinking the same way as me, please just drop your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think in terms of going against the template formation, captains, and even picks in general. So I just think the template is a template for a reason, right? And so we should sort of bring in the players that we think are going to score the most points, whether they have high effective ownership or not. But in general, the template has a lot of great picks. So why go against it? Just something to think about for next season. And regardless of this sob story, I think it's time to move into my Game Week 36 team review. These are the bunch of misfits I call my FPL team. So going into Game Week 36, it was a very simple transfer. I knew I wanted to target a Manchester City defender because they had the great entry point of Wolves at home. And then in the double game week, I had a feeling they'd probably be the best defense to own. And in Game Week 38, I don't think you can really trust any teams to get cleans, but I just thought a potential clean sheet against West Ham could be on the cards, especially if West Ham are kind of already on the beach. So I did feel like bringing in a Manchester City defender was the right call. And I was just debating between Kyle Walker and Joshua Gvardiol. And Gvardiol's been really on the radar because he picked up 3 attacking returns in the most recent games. And defensively, he's in very good positions, but offensively, the positioning for him is really, really strong. So he was definitely a consideration, especially given the fact that he's cheaper than Kyle Walker. But I just value expected minutes rather than attacking upside whenever I'm considering my Manchester City defenders in particular. So I decided to go for Kyle Walker because of the nailed minutes. The reason why I don't think Gvardiol is nailed is because recently Ake has been playing in the center back position with Ruben Diaz being out with an illness. I feel like Ruben Diaz, he hasn't had a great season, but I do feel like he still is Manchester City's best defender. So I do feel like he will start both games in the double game week, meaning that Gvardiol will probably get one start on the left and then Ake would get the other. And because of that, I didn't want to bring in any rotation risk into my team, and that's why I decided to go for Kyle Walker. And of course, Gvardiol goes out there, picks up another attacking return, and Walker does not. But that's okay. I understand why I made the decision, and I can live with the results. Moving on to my second transfer, I did decide to take a hit at the last minute. And you know, I did this very late on because I didn't even take a proper screenshot because I don't even have Pedro Porro in my squad. So my transfer this week was Fabian Schär to Pedro Porro for a -4. Why would you take that hit and bring in someone that's playing against Liverpool away? Well, it's because there was news that apparently James Tarkowski could potentially miss this game because his wife is expecting a child. So I thought to myself that if I'm going to be taking this -4 in Game Week 37, why not just take the -4 now and at least get some points in Game Week 36 in case Tarkowski misses out? So that's why I decided to make that transfer. The reason that I'm selling Fabian Schär is that he picked up a hamstring injury, and according to Eddie Howe, who I know is the most trustworthy source, right? But apparently he's picked up a hamstring injury and he's supposed to be out for this season. So that's why I decided to take that -4. And you know what's really funny? I decided to do it in case Tarkowski didn't play, that I get some points off the bench from Pedro Porro. And what's funny is Porro ended up with 0 points anyway. So it didn't even really matter if I made this move this week or not. But it's just funny to laugh at situations that happen like that, you know? Moving on to my defense, I have James Tarkowski, who actually got the minutes playing against Luton, and I wasn't surprised when I found out that Luton scored because, you know what, Everton are kind of on the beach. They've secured survival, whereas Luton are fighting relegation, trying their best to survive, so I knew they'd be pushing to score, and of course, they did. That made sense. Tarkowski lost the clean sheet, but Jareth Brantwaite is the one thing that frustrates me. I know his effective ownership is very low, but a lot of people went to Jareth Brantwaite because of his price. And when you look over the course of the season, Brantwaite has, I think, around 4 or 5 attacking returns from an underlying XG of around 2.0, whereas Tarkowski has an underlying XG of 5.0 and only has 2 returns. So it's kind of like an Uno reverse. And the people that are owning Jareth Brantwaite for the attacking returns, in my opinion, are just lucky. You know what? Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. So I think those owners that have Brantwaite, they're lucky, and I'm so jealous, man. I wish that was my player getting the attacking returns every other week. Moving on to my other defenders, we have Dan Burn and Kyle Walker, who are both in the same boat because they conceded last-minute consolation goals that really didn't matter. I really want to emphasize this point about Ederson. I don't like Ederson at all. The goal that they conceded was from an Ederson mistake, and I really do believe that Ederson's not a good FPL pick because he doesn't get many saves and you can't trust Man City for cleans. And on top of that, I don't even think he's one of the top 5 goalies in the Premier League in general. He makes so many mistakes. He has a very poor XG prevented. I'm not a fan of Ederson. I know why he's in the Manchester City 11 because Pep Guardiola values his ball distribution, but I just think if they had the money, which Manchester City do, they should spend money on this position. But we'll see what happens in the future, and I know Pep is satisfied with this position, but whenever Ortega is in the team, I really trust him to keep more cleans. And that's a really bold take, especially given the fact that Ederson starts for Brazil in like half of their matches. So I know that's kind of controversial, but that's my honest opinion. Moving on to my front 7, I want to be starting with the Chelsea boys, so Cole Palmer and Nicholas Jackson. I'm not one of the few players that got Jackson's points off the bench from a Bruno Fernandes absence. I actually started both of them because I'm targeting West Ham. I do feel like West Ham are a very poor defense recently, conceding 5 goals to Palace and 5 goals to Chelsea, so I'm really glad that I went for Jackson. In fact, when I had to decide between Jackson versus Isak in my Gameweek 35 transfer, I decided to go for Jackson. And fortunately, Jackson has actually outscored Isak over Gameweek 35 and Gameweek 36 combined. So I'm really happy that I went down that route. Now, I know that Isak had just missed the penalty, and if he had scored that, then he'd be the one outscoring Jackson, but that's just how FPL is. So I'm really happy to have gotten that transfer decision right. And of course, Cole Palmer. He's genuinely inevitable. He picked up another attacking return. What a guy. He's just the best enabler in FPL. And of course, everyone knows this by now. We're going into Game Week 37, but it's certain players like this that we take for granted. And I wonder next season at around maybe 8 or 8.5 if his ownership will be as high as it currently is now. Moving on to my second midfielder that's also on the penalties, Heung-min Son. Now, Spurs were honestly poor for the first 60 minutes of this game. Then Postecoglou subs on Maddison, subs on Richarlison, and that changed the entire game. I think they hadn't scored a goal before that substitution. Those two guys come on, they changed the game. Richarlison was so direct. Maddison doesn't really have the impact that he was having in the first half of the season, but he's still having a positive impact on the team when he's there. And Richarlison does feel like the second best Spurs attacker to own from an FPL perspective. And if I had the ability to go back when I made my Salah to Maddison move, I probably would have just not made that move because Salah ended up killing it this week, and I wish I had owned him. Salah could have had a hat trick easily. I don't know how he missed one of those tap-ins that were on the line. But if I could go back and switch my Maddison move to Richarlison, I wish I had the guts to have made that move. But bring in Maddison for a hit from Mo Salah might go down as one of my worst FPL transfers ever. Like, genuinely. I know why I did the move because I was targeting Maddison from a motivation perspective and the fact he had a double in Game Week 35 and Game Week 37. But man, what a disappointment. I'm just glad that I made my correct benching decision in terms of benching Maddison and starting Mateta and Jackson ahead of him. Specifically talking about Son, I just think Son was kind of invisible because Spurs were playing so poor in the first half. Then Richarlison and Maddison came on. He was much more lively, and never doubt Heung-min Son. He's inevitable. Like, that's the thing with Spurs. It's like, it's death, taxes, and overperforming XG. Like, Son is an XG overperformer, and I just trust him. Like, he is so good. Even when you can't find him in the game, he'll just find a way to just get a goal or an assist. Like, that's how great he is. And of course, he returned 7 points. Classic Heung-min Son. Then I went to my captain, which is going to be Bukayo Saka, a 10-pointer against Bournemouth. He had his fingerprints all over this game. He could have hauled massively, but that's just what happens for me in FPL. I'm not getting the rub of the green, but I'm really happy that he picked up 10 points at least, and that's a solid return from a captaincy option. And going into the last game of the season, Manchester United versus Crystal Palace, I was 3 points behind the safety score, but Hakuna Mateta. It means no worries for the rest of your days. And you know what? Mateta delivered. And this was actually his last dance. I knew for sure I was going to be selling him to either one of Isak, Callum Wilson, or Joao Pedro going into Game Week 37, and I just thought that this fixture against Manchester United was going to be a very good last chance saloon for him, and he delivered 6 points. And I'm kind of comparing him to the template where it's going to be that Anthony Gordon spot or that Bruno Fernandes spot, and he matched them. So I'm really happy that he did that, and so this was a score of 95 points with a -4 to 91, and that was enough to secure me a gray arrow from 230k to another 230k rank. So a very meh game week overall, but I'm just happy that I didn't lose rank, especially given the fact that I missed on my captaincy decision. Moving on to my Game Week 37 team selection, this is what my team looks like. I do have my bench boost active alongside the other 80% of the top 100k in the FPL community. So having that chip active is not much of a differential, just maybe gaining on around 20% of the field, which is not that much. But I'm glad that I'm able to at least keep up with the other 80% of the FPL community. Now, before I wanted to go into the transfers that I made and my team selection, I do want to just talk about this graphic from Rob T FPL, and I do want to just talk about defenders that have potential chances to keep a clean sheet. Now, there are a lot of people that are going to be considering defensive transfers, and I think it's important to understand who are the teams that are doubling that have the best chances to keep at least one clean sheet. And what I've done is I've taken the percentages from this graphic and added them together. And what I'm noticing is that Chelsea have the highest percentage chance to keep one clean, followed by Newcastle, Spurs, and then Manchester United. I'm not sure Man U will keep a clean at all. I don't think I can recommend ever bringing in a Manchester United defender at this point. Given how poor they've been playing, even with or without Bruno Fernandes, I don't think they'll keep a clean sheet. And one thing I did want to mention is the fact that if you have defenders from teams like Everton that have a potential chance of a clean sheet around 38%, or Arsenal that have a potential chance of a clean sheet at 34%, I'm not sure it's even worth taking a hit to bring in another defender. Even though the defensive chances of a clean sheet is slightly better, I'm not sure the -4 will pay off. And I think if I owned players like James Tarkowski, Branthwaite, White, or Gabriel, I would just hold on to them. The second thing I wanted to bring up in terms of this graphic is looking at the expected goals of differential captaincy options. So if we're looking at a differential captain, we'd be considering Alexander Isak, and we would consider Cole Palmer, as well as Heung-min Son. However, if we look at the expected goals for Manchester City, it's just so much stronger than the other three. I just feel like it's not a good decision to be going for a differential captain in this week. I think Haaland is the standout captaincy option, and he's a 100% lock for me. Moving on to my transfer from Game Week 37, it was Jean-Philippe Mateta to Alexander the Great. I'm really happy to have invited Alexander Isak to my FPL team. And you know when you sell certain players in FPL, in terms of just selling Jean-Philippe Mateta, it doesn't really feel like goodbye. It feels more like a see you later. And I've only owned him for 3 games this season. He blanked at Anfield. He got a goal at Old Trafford. Then he picked up 29 points in a double game week. What an absolute legend, Mateta. I've been having a very poor season, but he's been one of the saving graces. So really happy that I went for him. And I think I did consider 3 different strikers in this position: Isak, Wilson, and Joao Pedro. Now, both Brighton and Newcastle are playing against a very poor Manchester United team, and that is the team that I'm looking to target in terms of my attacking transfer that I'm bringing in. So that wasn't a differentiating factor, but it's just the fact when I'm watching Brighton and when I'm watching Newcastle, I do feel like I trust Newcastle to actually score more goals than Brighton. So that's why I decided to go for either one of Wilson or Isak. That's how I dumbed it down. Now, when I was picking between Wilson and Isak, I'm looking at my rank at around 220k, and I should be bringing in the differential, especially given the fact I'm going to be captaining Haaland, right? Well, that's the thing, is that Callum Wilson has started back-to-back games against Burnley and Sheffield alongside Isak. Now, I'm not sure, coming up against the next 2 games against Brighton and Manchester United, if Newcastle will roll out with that double striker formation again. So I just think there is a question mark over Callum Wilson's minutes, and there is news that's come out that he has a potential hamstring injury, but it's probably just some fear mongering. Really, I'm not sure if it's real, but it just highlights the fact that with Isak, you know that he's going to be a 90-minute man. He may not be on the penalties like he was because he just missed the last one, and I think Callum Wilson is still on the penalties. So I think there's a chance he's not on the pens, but I just feel like Isak is one of the best players in FPL, and I know that Callum Wilson has one of the best goal/assist ratios per 90 in the Premier League, but I just think that it's hard to look past Alexander Isak. He does feel like one of the best strikers in the entire league, and I just feel like going into this double game week without Isak, it just feels like a mistake. Even if I'm looking to bring in and go differential, I think going without him is not smart. I think you would have had to go with Wilson plus Isak, not just Wilson instead of Isak. So because of that, I'm going to make this simple move of Mateta to Isak. And overall, when I'm looking at my team, I'm very, very happy. You know, I have my triple Chelsea, my triple Man City, my triple Spurs, and then I've got double Everton playing against one of the worst attacks in the league in Sheffield. I have my double Newcastle. I got 1 attacker and 1 defender. And then I've got my double Arsenal playing against a very poor Manchester United team. So I think I'm really, really happy with it. I think I look at it and I'm very satisfied. In fact, it kind of looks similar to what a lot of free hit teams will look like. Maybe instead of Madison, you'd probably have Richarlison in that spot. Instead of Gusto, you'd probably have Cucurella. And maybe instead of Pickford, you'd probably go for some sort of doubling keeper. But in general, I do feel like this is a very strong team, especially to do it without a hit. And I know I'm not taking a hit this week, but I've probably taken around 10 hits in the last 10 weeks. Like, I've taken way too many hits recently, and that's why my rank has had trouble rising, because I'm kind of just like limiting what I can do because I'm taking so many hits. And I feel like being able to just go through this week without a hit will put me at an advantage versus what the field will do. I think most managers will be taking at least a -4 this week. Moving on to my bench, I have two defensive options. The first one is David Raya playing against Manchester United, and then Tarkowski playing against Sheffield. And I do feel like I can potentially get one clean sheet from these two fixtures. So in my mind, I feel like that is going to be 6 points plus 2 points. Let's assume I'm at 8 so far. Then I've got Bukayo Saka playing against a very poor Manchester United defense. And I think just a nailed on 6 points for Bukayo. So that would be 8, which is plus the 6, which is 14 points. And then I've got Dan Burn with a double. He probably will blink in both fixtures, giving me a total of around 3 points. So I think I should have around 15 plus points in my bench boost. And I'm not going to be taking a hit this week. And I'm very, very satisfied with that. If I get less than 15, I would be completely surprised and I would be disappointed, but got to live with the results. I'm looking at my bench and I'm very happy with it. And I'm really excited to go into this weekend's worth of football and to go and enjoy it. All right, guys, that is what my Gameweek 37 team looks like, as well as what my bench boost looks like. I'm hoping that I'm able to get 15 points. Do you think I'm going to get that? Let me know in the comment section down below. If I provided some value to you over the course of this video, please just drop a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all again soon. Peace.